Hello. Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in with us. I'm Meriah Kruse from Life Force Marketing. Today, I'm here on behalf of my ongoing project, which I call Be Heard, Online and Beyond. In being heard, what I'm doing is encouraging solo business owners and small businesses in wellness and in the arts and related kinds of businesses, and also leaders for change to find their voices and make themselves more visible, more audible for an important purpose of some kind. I encourage people to share their leadership, their knowledge, their opinions and perspectives and wisdom with others, either toward building a new business, expanding or transitioning an existing business, or launching a movement or even an organization. My passion is to encourage each person who wants to be heard to have the courage, to muster the perseverance, and to gain the necessary storytelling and marketing skills, and then take the steps to be heard online and beyond. As part of this project, I have the privilege of writing about and sometimes interviewing people who are being heard in one form or another, and who are demonstrating excellence in the process. These one-to-one features will be called Hear Tell, a spotlight on Pathfinders. And that's why we're here together today. I want to say a little more about this title. Hear Tell, as you may or may not know, is an old-fashioned expression. I've heard it all my life. We use that expression like this: from what I hear tell, this is what happened. Or to hear her tell it, this is what happened. Hear tell is the essence of being heard online. You know how it works. One person tells a story or shares her expertise. A second person hears or reads or discovers this in an article, maybe a social media post, a webinar, a video, a newsletter, a podcast. And then that second person shares what they learned with another friend or colleague. And this is how important news and stories travel. So it's about repeated cycles of hearing or reading and then telling. Depending on how we go about doing that and how many people are listening, our stories can, in this way, reach hundreds or even thousands of people online and beyond. The word pathfinder doesn't require much explanation. A pathfinder is a valuable person who finds or makes a path to illuminate the way for others. So tonight is the second chapter in Hear Tell, a spotlight on Pathfinders. The first chapter was on Memorial Day when I interviewed Dr. Aminata Cairo. Today, we'll be joined by someone I feel so privileged to introduce to you, or you may already know her, and that is Judy Rodman. She's been making music for over 50 years. When you see her, you'll wonder how that's possible because she looks so young. But she knows every aspect of that business. She's an award-winning vocal coach, a recording artist, a stage and television producer. She's a public speaker and an author and a multi-genre hit songwriter. She's a studio producer and a vocal consultant. Impressive, huh? So she's worked also as a background vocalist. I found this so interesting. She's also done arrangements, the backup vocals, and also other contracting work for hundreds of master albums, live shows, and TV for artists that you know, including Tammy Wynette, Elvis Presley, Tom Jones, Johnny Cash, Dolly Parton, Ray Charles. The list is long. She's toured with the Oak Ridge Boys, Merle Haggard, Willie Nelson, Loretta Lynn, and many others. Judy was named the best vocal coach in 2011 by the Nashville Music Pros. She formulated and teaches her own trademarked vocal training method. She calls it Power, Path, and Performance. And she's teaching that to both singers and speakers nationally and internationally. Judy recently surpassed the 2 million reader mark for her blog, All Things Vocal. Talk about knowing how to be heard. And her podcast, which was launched in 2010, now has almost 200,000 plays on its own. She's averaging 1,000 people per episode. It's in that capacity that she's here with us today. She's not going to be singing for us, unfortunately, but it is such an honor to introduce Judy Rodman. Let me bring her on, y'all.
Woohoo!
Judy.
Thank you, Meriah. Thank you for that kind introduction. Yes, you know, when I look at your bio, I know that I'm in good company. I'm in the company of someone who understands all these hats that we wear through decades of plying our trades and learning a couple of things along the way. Yeah.
There's no better way to learn than by doing and having to figure it out. And I'll bet you've done plenty of that. And I have done plenty of that too. You're right. So maybe we have found a sympathetic soul in each other. I'm so glad to have met you and that you had the time to come. I know you've had a very busy day and another one tomorrow. So before we get started, is there anything you just wanted to say right at the beginning before we dive into some questions?
No, just thank you for mentioning the blog and podcast. I really like being able to get out to people that are not necessarily in my own pond. And I think that what you're doing with Here Tell Spotlight on Pathfinders, you're doing that. You're getting voices that you want, whose messages, you know, resonate with you. You're magnifying them out where they're getting in new ponds and stuff. And so I really appreciate that, not only for me, but for everyone else you'll have on.
Thank you so much. I'm having such a grand and glorious time doing this, even though I've just started. Okay, so I'm gonna really just plow into some prepared questions. Since I wanted to give this some thought and ask you some questions that are, you know, get to the core of some of who you are and some of the things that I think will be valuable for our listeners too. So you wrote a blog post and recorded it for your, I think it was for both your podcast and your blog, in November 2020. Mm-hmm. And this post really captured my attention. You already know what it is I'm doing here, and I'm trying to encourage people to use their voices and to use their words and their platform for good and to become skillful at doing that. So, of course, I was drawn to this particular piece that you called Responsibilities of Successful Voices. So that's what I wanted to ask you about. To give our listeners just a little context, I want to read a short quote from that episode. Here we go. The voice can be very, very powerful. It can heal, destroy, inspire, shut down, mislead, correct, change one mind, or redirect the trajectory of the whole world in tremendous ways, for better or worse. It's a slippery slope to unintended harm when we don't realize what is really driving us and our messages. If we want to be on the side of the angels, our voice's core why needs to be consciously and intentionally about far more than money, fame, or power. I love that so much. So obviously you've spent a lifetime exploring your voice, as well as coaching singers, speakers, and actors to strengthen or improve their voices in some way. Many of your blog posts are on your podcast, All Things Vocal, are on those kinds of subjects, such as vocal technique and other related topics. So what led you to write on that particular day or any day about the responsibilities of successful voices?
Well, mostly because I believe in the power of the voice. I believe in the power of the voice, and I don't think people realize their own power, and they don't use it. They don't use it. They just sometimes just rant, or they, just sort of say what they need to say to make themselves feel better. We all do
Mm.
that, like, and all that.
Mhm.
But sometimes we should do that, or we should journal and then burn it, you know, because the voice is a two-sided thing. It's an interactive sport when you're speaking or
Mm.
singing to someone. And you know, successful voices are by definition getting listened to.
Mm.
Therefore, they have responsibilities, and too many
Mm.
people don't think about that.
Mm.
And so at the time I wrote this, there was so much incredibly
Mm.
angry talk and even songs being written. And I just wanted people to think, if you're an influencer, then you've got to, you know, it's more powerful than a gun, that thing that you've got coming out of your face, which is your voice.
Mm.
And you need to realize that you have a responsibility for what? For the response to what you're saying or singing,
Mhm.
because that's the aim of the voice. The voice exists to deliver messages. And if you're going to deliver messages, it's about getting a response to those messages. So what response are you looking for? And I wrote this post, I rewrote it a few times, and I was scared to write it. I almost wrote it and just decided I just needed to vent, you know. But then I'm thinking to myself, okay, who am I talking to? How do I want them to respond? Do I want them to just realize I'm angry with them? Or do I want them to think? And that's what I want. I want them
Yeah.
to think. That makes my voice valuable. If I'm just griping or telling somebody how stupid they are, or, you know, if they disagree with me and or not listening to their voice along with giving them my messages, so it the voice becomes valueless, or even worse, harmful, and can
Mm.
actually add to the
Mm.
negativity and to, you know, I mean, life and death issues. Uh,
Yeah.
People are getting killed over the power of the voice not
That's
being
right.
used correctly. So
Mhm.
that's why I wrote it. And I wanted to be so careful to write it so that anybody from any side that was reading it, if they're good hearted and they do care about other people, that they
Mhm.
can resonate with it. And I didn't know how it would be accepted. So the
Mm.
fact that you loved it, ah,
Mm.
oh my gosh, it
Mm.
means the world to me.
Mm. It was so related to some things I've been thinking about lately. I wonder, do you have any, like, direct experience with this ability of the voice to change a mind or redirect the trajectory of the world? I love that statement.
You know, I'll give you two examples real quickly. One is a student that came to me very dysfunctionally vocally, you know, was having a lot of problems. She was one of the very first people that I taught when I started teaching 20 something years ago. And her name is Jenny Shafer. Well, little did we know it, or I didn't know at the time because it was a deep, dark secret of hers. She had a deeply persuasive, you know, she had a really bad eating disorder, is what I'm trying to say,
Oh.
and had it all her life. And she was hiding it all her life from everybody. And it was causing her voice to shut down. Well,
Mm.
long story short, through vocal training, because you have to enter your body to actually technically power your voice and control it correctly and
Mhm.
wake up your communication skills. You can't do that from a
Mm.
position of numbness. So it was so hard for her to do that. And we didn't know why, but I just kept having her raise her arms instead of clench them to her sides and all that. Well, she ended up, you know, having a lot of traumatic experiences there. She ended up on my doorstep at 2:00 in the morning when it was freezing cold and not
Mm.
knowing where she was. She ended up with therapy, and then through therapy, she gained her own voice. She healed, and then she wrote this book that she and I wrote the theme song for. It was a multimedia project called
Oh.
Life Without Ed, which is eating disorder. And she went on to have it published by McGraw-Hill. She was on Dr. Phil talking about it. She's been has just articles in like Elle magazine and the Huffington Post and I
Mm.
think the New York Times. And she's even got a Japanese version that I produced her vocal for. Uh, uh, she's got a Japanese version of the song
Mm.
because the book is selling over there and it's global. But she's become this tiny little, scared to death little puppy that had this terrible eating disorder has become this driving force for helping other people heal from it. And there's so many people who's really, they owe their lives to her, really. So that's one. Another is Matt Carney, who used to be in a really bad druggie, drug addict. And when he found his voice, he worked with other kids that had drug problems and helped many of them back into life. And then he became a big artist who that wasn't his slant. That wasn't his focus to become a big artist, but he did. So long story short, his message and his influence has gone out in many a green room that has, really got cocaine in it. And that he, decided, no, that's not going to be what I do anymore. Just him being places in the realms that he was in, has affected the world. And I'm just amazed at him. And he never changed from the time he was in my office doing vocal lessons to the time he's opening in Madison Square Garden for, John Mayer and different people. Anyway, he's just the same, because his core why is that his voice delivers messages, even subliminal messages about positivity and love and acceptance and, healing. So there's two.
God, you must love what you do.
I do.
There is nothing better than knowing that you have the ability to affect people's lives like that.
To be the wind, to blow a little wind beneath wings like that. Yes. I mean, I can't imagine a more prosperous journey for me. Yeah.
Let's see. I want to come back to the part about choosing consciously and intentionally to have a core why for how we use our voices. And I know this is something that you teach about all the time. And you've worked with a lot of people who have very famous voices that we would recognize if we heard them on the radio. Do you find that many people who make their living performing do have a clear sense of their voice's core why?
I would have to tell you that some do and some don't. And the artist the creative person is tender. Okay. And there's a lot of times there's trauma in the past of creatives, and they do what they do artistically kind of to help heal from that. But sometimes it's not quite healed. Yeah. And they're trying, their why becomes, it's like they haven't matured. Their why becomes, because I need all this stuff, because I need to take care of me. If you mature as a human being, you get past the child place, an adolescent place of dependence and independence, and you become interdependent. And you realize that if you're not valuable to somebody else, I don't care how many Grammys you got, you're not valuable. And you're not even valuable to yourself, because the highs are just, there's a place of fear for people like that, because like, what are they going to do next? You know, and you can see it in the stories. And there's like something called TikTok burnout. Have you heard of that?
I have.
Yeah. I mean, these stars that really don't have any why, they just were having fun, and what they were doing caught on. And so they had millions and millions of followers. And then they got on this treadmill of having to come up with this content. And there wasn't any really reason for them to be doing it except to have more followers. If you got more money and you got more followers, and that's the end game, then you're going to have a failed life. I mean, I'm sorry to put it in such abject terms. So part of my job as a coach is to call people's attention to that, and coax them into, and ask questions. Why are you doing this? Maslow's, hierarchy of needs really comes into play.
Yeah.
But at the top of that, it's like, if I can help them be in a safe place with me, that's a good start, and
It
then
is.
I can care about them. And when they feel cared about, sometimes that
Mhm.
opens them up to caring about other people, and
Yeah.
also opens them up to things they've walled off about themselves. Listen,
Yeah.
I've had more than one student cry in here, and
Yeah.
a couple of them have decided to stop vocal lessons so they could go into therapy.
Uh-huh.
and,
Yeah.
and it's just wonderful, because the voice is so much a part of the core of you that if you're numb, you might have a terrible eating disorder, or you might be a victim of a panic attack, or have been, abused in some way, or there's lots of reasons, and I see those people all the time, and it's so much fun to help them get free, because not only is it going to help them, but then they are going to use their voices to go on and be examples for other people, because
Mhm.
it doesn't work to preach. It only works to
Yep.
share what you really know.
And it sounds like creating a safe space is something that you really know. And there's very few things more powerful than that. Um, when some people are never in a safe space, and to
Right.
give them that, um, and then when you're not their family member, you're somebody else. So that makes the container a little bit different too.
Right.
I can easily see how you have the opportunity to affect a lot of lives that way. So Judy Rodman goes viral because you affect others who go out and affect others, right? I just love that.
Ripples in the pond.
Yep. Well, are there any of your clients or fellow musicians who you're especially have been inspired by their why? You said, I think in the podcast, you mentioned a little bit about Dolly Parton, who you seem to admire.
I love Dolly. I had the honor of singing on one of her records, Burlap and Satin. So I did sing with her, and I, run across her in my career time and for one reason or another. So,
Uh-huh.
but the thing is that I see her using her platform. She doesn't have to do anything for anybody. She
Yeah.
does it because she wants to, because she doesn't
Mhm.
need to. And it's part of her why to help the
Mm.
people that, in Appalachia, where she came from, to
Yeah.
give millions of dollars to help with the COVID thing, to
Yeah.
say, get your shots, I
Mhm.
have, and be an influence like that. So Dolly, for sure. I'm trying to find this. I wanted to tell you about Jenny Tolman, who is an up and coming artist, but she's doing really well out there. And I think she's going to be one of the next big things. So
Mhm.
just so you know, Jenny Tolman, but she's got this song called My Welcome Mat. And it goes, and she's got she's country. She's like traditional country-ish. She's
Okay.
incredible. More like, Emmylou Harris, like she's
Okay.
really, really, really good, and her writing's really good. But
Mm.
she's got this song called My Welcome Mat, which is pretty brave for the genres she's in. My welcome mat. Don't care if you're white or black. Don't care if you're thin or fat. Ain't there to judge all that. My heart is an open door. Don't care
Mm.
if you're rich or poor. Ain't the world just a big front porch anyway? So,
Oh. Oh.
yeah. And
Woo!
this big actor, Jeff Bridges, actually
Mhm.
recorded it. So she was very, very surprised, and he sang it at some big concert out in California. She flew out there with her co-writer and fiance to listen.
Oh,
Another one is
congratulations.
Casey Musgraves, who is a student,
Mm.
has been a student of mine, and she has really broken a lot of the rules about what you can talk about and what you can't. And
Mm.
lastly, I've been around him, but I haven't opened for him. He actually was a contemporary of mine back when I was an artist, but he's gone way farther, of course, than I did. But that's Garth Brooks. And I
Mhm.
think, he did something as brave as singing at this last inaugural.
Yep.
Yet he has got totally sold out country fans coming to his concerts.
Mm.
And so, what I'm looking at is people who they love everybody. They love both sides of everybody,
Mhm.
people on both sides of the great divide that we've got in our country and our world right now. They love these people, and they really hate the people that are taking advantage of them. But they're brave enough to be true to their own callings without being afraid they might lose a fan. Give me that kind of artist, and I'll blow wind underneath those wings all day.
Here you are doing it right now. Thank you. Thank you. That was really, really interesting. So let's switch gears a little bit now. I know that you work as a professional vocal coach and for many different musical genres, which I find really fascinating, and that you've worked with literally thousands of singers and speakers in these multiple genres. So what's it like working with so many different kinds of people across different musical traditions and communities, really? And, how have you had to adapt to cover so much varied ground? What's that been like for you?
Well, I'll let you in on a little secret. All of my students are guinea pigs for each other. So what I've done through this is the way I have grown into the teacher that I am. Two things. One, I'm always looking for new information. If anybody's got something that works, I want to know about it. And I've gathered all this stuff through the years, but I started with what worked for me and what still works for me on stage and in the studio. And I start with that because I know I can trust it. I'm not sure why it works. It wasn't at first. I know a lot more about why it works now, but I knew that it worked. So I would try it on a few people, and especially if it worked on several different kinds of people with totally opposite problems, I knew I had something. That's the way I developed my method, which is about this power, path, and performance, as you mentioned, but it's about breath, power of the breath, the path the voice takes through an open instead of a tight throat, and communication, power, meaning communication skills, or performance rather, meaning communication skills. So it's breath, open throat, and communication skills. Because without that communication skills being the end goal is that I want this certain response. Without that, you can have the best voice in the whole world. And it's falling on deaf ears, it's elevator music at best, because there's no power to it, because it's not really doing anything. It's just making noise. Might be very pleasant noise, but
I can so relate to that. As a dancer, I was a dancer for many, many years, and there's such a difference between a dancer who's got something passionate that they're wanting to communicate. In fact, usually I find that older dancers are far more interesting because they actually have lived a lot more life.
Yeah.
But often younger dancers, but some other dancers as well, they're technically amazing, and such finesse. But when I watch them dance, I'm completely unmoved because there's nothing coming out. What in your vernacular would be, there's no communication skills. It's just maybe they have an open throat, but they don't have communication skills yet.
Well, there's a reason that most artists, I would say, don't sing as well as their background singers. But the background singers can't get artist deals because they're technically incredible, but they have, now that doesn't mean everybody, because there are a lot of background singers that really are artists that are doing that for a living, just doing that to make some money. But, and there are some artists that, but if you're not a communicator, you're not going to be an artist for long. It's not there. You might be an entertainer, which is a little bit different than being an arts artist, but even an entertainer has got to communicate. So,
that's really fascinating. I'm going to be listening to musicians so differently after this conversation. I mean it. So is there anything that I've already experienced you as being a person who is highly encouraging by nature. Plus you've made a career out of being an encourager. So is there anything you'd like to say to people who might be listening either right now or later to the recording, who are passionate about an idea, a business, or something else, and maybe they're just beginning to step out in a bigger way, onto a bigger stage? where they're going to be heard potentially by more people than before. Just, is there any kind of advice or just perspective that you would like to share beyond what you've already said, which is very valuable?
You know what? I want to share. I thought about this question because you sent me some of these questions, and I want to share with you what's become my priority tree, because that's how I feel like I am the most valuable. And the thing about that is, when I'm the most valuable to somebody else, that's when I'm the most fulfilled in my life. And I think that's what we all want. My priority tree is my first level, like it's the number one thing that's my priority, is a spiritual connection. However you find that to be real for yourself. And so that's number one, because without that, I'm not fed that silver cord of empathy and meaning and raison d'etre, reason for doing everything and breathing. And spiritual's first. The second one is relational. So if I don't have someone that I love and loves me, friend, family, if I'm not spending time regularly with them, if I don't make them a priority, then if I don't care what I achieve, it's not worth it. Yeah. The third is my health, because if I don't have my health, again, my life is going to be, I can make it worth it, but it's my health is so important for me to be able to do what I want to do. Yeah. And then fourth is creative, not first. Fourth is creative, because if I'm not creating something, I feel a hole in my gut. I feel a hole in my spirit. So I've got to keep creating. And then fifth and last is business. Fifth and last is business, because if I get the other four in line, I'll be doing really good business that's valuable, and I'll be getting a return for what I'm doing. Yeah. And that's the way it has worked for me. And even if the thing is that the crazy arts, the business of the arts is always like this, it's never, nothing's ever for sure. But even if everything fell away and I never did anything, again or whatever, I know that I've touched somebody, I know that I've made the world a better place. And so I'm going to end my journey satisfied. So that's what I would suggest to everybody. Get your why in order, and get your priority tree in order. Figure out what's important to you, and then spend your time accordingly. Actually use your time to check your priority tree.
That is wonderful advice for anybody at any stage of life. Just that set of reminders about priority, which gets to what your values are and living by your values. It's so easy to forget what they are and just get wrapped up in the moment and the hustle and bustle and whatever the routine is, and whatever our aspirations are. But I love what you said. I think it's really good counsel for all of us, and definitely for me. So thank you for that reminder.
You're welcome.
Well, I could talk to you all day, but I guess we won't. Is there anything that you've got coming up? I know you're continually busy, but is there something coming up that you want to tell us about?
The main thing is just watch my, go online to judyrodman.com and get that free vocal health tips thing. And I'll be sending you free blog posts and podcast links that will help you for free. And then if I've got an announcement something's coming up, which I will, it'll be there. So just everything goes back to my core hub, which is judyrodman.com. Yeah.
And I'm actually going to post that real quick. So everybody hang in here with me for a minute, because I'm going to share my screen and share something of Judy. Here's Judy's. This is what her page looks like. That's the top of her banner. Right. And there's the URL, judyrodman.com. And as you can see, this is what she's referring to. You can go there and sign up to get a free 5-page vocal health report. tips for getting in, keeping, and recovering a good voice. And that'll also put you in line for her newsletter. So that's great.
Yeah.
Let me thank Judy Rodman so much for being here and for all the encouraging words that you've been sending me the last couple of weeks. I really appreciate it.
Oh gosh, they're so deserved. You are so deserving, girl. And I love the series. Yes. Thank you so much for putting me in.
You're welcome.
Thank you for inviting me. This is wonderful. The questions are so insightful and in things that are important. And so
Yes.
you're a great business woman, but you got an incredible why. So I just love you.
Thank you. I love you too already. And we both want to say thank you to our audience, whether we're with us live tonight, whether you're a friend of mine or a friend of Judy's or somebody who doesn't know either one of us from Adam, or whether you're listening later, wherever you might find us, we both say thank you very much for listening in. And by all means, use your voice responsibly. So
Please.
I think that's going to be all for tonight. Thank you so much.
Got it.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
This is Meriah Kruse. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Hear Tell, Spotlight on Pathfinders. To see another interview, click on the thumbnail image in the upper left-hand corner.